we are calculating all these conditional distributions, so we're assuming that we know them, right? But what would happen if we don't know them? All these
Yes,
conditional distributions. Because I don't see like
correct.
if there is like some a very unknown distribution and we even don't know the conditionals, then how would this work?
Then this, see, there are two ways you can know these conditionals.
Yeah.
One reason you don't know Px is very high dimensional. It's difficult to derive the normalizing constant, the denominator. Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
but
Correct.
if it's that is one case. So that's called the analytic case. You know the analytics value. Another thing is that since this is a one-dimensional distribution, even if
Hmm.
it is unknown,
Hmm.
you can use you can use rejection sampling to draw a fair sample from it.
Yes. Got it.
Huh. But it is difficult to do a rejection sampling for a high dimensional distribution.
Yes, sir. Got it. Correct.
Huh. Let me just tell one more word about it, because you see the rejection region that is small for 1D. The moment you increase the dimension to, let's say, 2, your rejection region increases. You may go to even higher dimension, your rejection region would be even more inefficient. So the in really this is called, it is also a very important issue in machine learning. It's called shrinking volume effect. It's called a shrinking volume effect. That means shrinking volume effect. So that means the higher dimension you go, the ratio of the perimeter to the area that goes on reducing. That goes to 0 as dimension goes to infinity. So it can actually be shown that see, the more complex distribution you have, so this perimeter is kind of a support of this distribution. Okay, so really what you have is the support is something which is more or less well behaved, but it's the area which is more complex, the volume which is more complex, and that ratio goes down as we increase the dimension. So rejection sampling becomes less and less efficient as we go to higher. The Monte Carlo in general becomes less and less efficient if you go to higher and higher dimension. So it's easy to do a Monte Carlo in one dimension. In fact, I mean, that way you can also think, if you do such a rejection sampling, you can think of Gibbs also as an MCMC method. But if you think of these conditionals as closed forms, then it is only Markov chain, not Monte Carlo. But that's the whole idea. In fact, we'll see an example later that when we'll do something called a topic modeling, that means we'll think of x1, x2 at words in a document, and this distribution is over words, then we will see that how do we rejection sampling and do that. But you are very right. This is this is actually a drawback of Gibbs sampling also. This is a drawback of Gibbs sampling also.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so let us propose a new sampling idea like this. Or let me show it like this. So let's say this is my state space, or this is my input space x1, x2. And let's say I have some unknown distribution. This is P of x1, x2. I'm unable to draw in 3D, but let's say this is a 3D distribution. I start with a x, some initial x1, 0, x2, 0. Or let's say I am in any particular state of my trajectory. So my trajectory will go like this, and I'll draw samples from this distribution. So what I do is the following. To solve the slow step process of Gibbs, I take a large step around it, maybe a large step around it. I explore. I jump from this to something which is little bit far ahead. And actually I not jump, I propose a jump. Propose a jump. And then and this propose a jump is as if done by somebody called a proposer or a proposal. In fact, since this is not deterministic, this is a random jump I take somewhere. So this proposal is also a distribution according to which I take the. So I have a proposal distribution. So say, for example, the proposal distribution where it can be something like this. So if this is my currently where I am, I draw a Gaussian which is centered around my current point and with some variance sigma. And my new new point would be a point generated according to this Gaussian. Say in this bivariate case, it would be a bivariate Gaussian centered around my current point, and the new point would be a sample drawn from this bivariate distribution somewhere. So more your sigma is, more flat this Gaussian distribution is, more further you will jump. So this is a proposal distribution, and this is only a proposal. Now there is a critic measure, and the critic measure what it says is that this new distribution does it lower your goodness of the sample. So this new point, is it a good sample according to this target distribution? Is it a high density region or a low density region? It is a good sample. Maybe see this distribution is something, this proposal may have moved it somewhere very outlier kind of thing. That's not a good proposal. So there is a critic which evaluates the proposal and says how good the proposal is, and if it exceeds a threshold, if the proposal exceeds a threshold, then you take the jump. So then you take the jump. Okay. So if it exceeds some threshold, you take the jump. If it does not exceed the threshold, it's not that you absolutely reject that jump, but you generate a new random number. You generate another new random number, and depending on what the value of that random number is, with some probability, so there is two ways you can take a jump. One is if it is a good jump, you straight away take the jump. If it is a bad jump, you take a risk. You toss a coin. If the coin turns out head, you take the risk and take the jump. You take the risk. So it's like this. This proposer is kind of a friend who asks you to, okay, let's go there. And if that move is really a good move, you take the jump. Straight away take the jump. If the move is a bad move, it's not that you altogether reject the jump. You take a risk. You toss a coin, and depending on the outcome of the coin, either you take the risk or you don't take the risk, and you stay where you are. And you stay where you are. So there is so first there is two ways. So there is move or stay. Move is if it is a good move with probability 1, you take the jump. If it is a bad move, then you toss a coin. If depending on the outcome of time, you take the risk and move, or you don't take the risk and stay where you are. Okay, so there is two ways you can move, and there is one way you cannot move. And this risk is actually important because it is a stochastic thing. Otherwise, exploration will halt. Only good moves will be allowed, and actually you need this randomness. You need this second. Again, you see that there are two randomness because the first, the proposal itself was generated by a random number drawn according to the proposal distribution. So this is coin toss 1. So the proposed move, that itself is first random number. So this is doubly stochastic. So the proposal itself is a random number, and whether the critic is another random number. There are two random numbers. Same as rejection sampling. Rejection sampling, the encapsulating distribution was generating one Z, and then one uniform random number was deciding whether to keep that Z or reject it. So it's doubly stochastic. Okay, so now this proposal distribution can be anything. As I have said, it can be an Gaussian centered around the current point. It can be an uniform distribution centered around the current point with some support. It can be anything, but it has to be a known or a standard kind of distribution so that this first random number is easily generated. Note that we are very restricted in what kind of random numbers we can generate. We can generate a uniform random number. At most, we can generate a normal random number, Gaussian random number. And we have to use that in an intelligent way to generate other distributions. Okay, so first thing you need is a proposal distribution, which can be anything, which can be a Gaussian, which can be uniform, but something not too complex. Now let us define this critique. Okay, so let me explain the entire algorithm one by one. So first generate an sample x0. And then repeat for, so S is my time step, repeat for say 1 to n or something, whatever. Initially start with x0, then this is my proposal. Generate a x prime. Actually, this in, let me, okay, so this is my x prime. As I have said, x prime is generated by a proposal distribution. So this step, you generate x prime according to some proposal distribution Q. So Q is my proposal distribution. Let's say Gaussian centered around x proposal distribution. So this Q kind of gives me my transition probability from x to x prime. But note that it is a distribution defined on the same x space because it is x prime given x and x prime has same space. So Q is a distribution in x space, state space itself. Okay, so this is the proposal distribution, is the transition. Generate a sample x prime. Now compute a quantity called alpha. Alpha is like this. Alpha is, so you have, it's kind of reversibility. So you have x, you have x prime. So this is the numerator of alpha is the probability that you are in x prime, and you have moved to x. You are in x prime and you have moved to x times the probability you are in x prime. So not exactly this target distribution, let's say p hat up to the normalization constant. So this is the probability kind of you are in x prime and you have moved to x. X prime is the proposed new point. So it's the numerator is kind of the reverse, the point of the probability that once you have got to the proposed point, what is the probability will come back to the starting point. And the denominator is the reverse. It's kind of you are in x, what is the probability you transition to x prime times the probability you are in x. But note that these two are this is the, so this proposal is the transition and p is the original probability that you are in x, where you want to converge to, which you want to be our stationary distribution. Right. So so one way of kind of intuitively thinking about it, it is the ratio of you are in state x prime after the transition to the ratio you are still in. I think it's the inverse of that. The probability that you are still in x to the probability that you are in x prime after the transition. This is alpha. Okay, this is alpha. All right. So now, if this alpha is greater than 1, if this alpha is greater than 1, then we say that the proposal is good. Proposal is good. With probability 1, you move to a new state. With probability 1, you move to a new state. Okay, and if alpha, this alpha is less than 1, okay, then it is not. Then it is okay. So we define a quantity called R, which is the minimum of 1 and alpha. So if alpha is less than 1, if alpha is less than less than 1, then R equal to alpha, else R equal to 1. That's what this minimum of 1 and alpha means. If alpha is less than 1, R is alpha, else R is 1. Right. So now you check. So if alpha is greater than equal to 1, you definitely move to a new point. Otherwise, you toss a coin, and rather not toss a coin, you generate a uniform random number between 0 and 1. And if that number is less than R, you transition, you take the risk. If that number is greater than R, you don't take the risk, you stay there. You stay there, right? So let me repeat the process again. So you are in X, you use a proposal distribution Q X prime X, let's say Gaussian, to generate a X prime. This is my proposal is to go to X prime. Now I evaluate how good is the proposal by first computing this value of alpha, which is kind of the ratio of this probability from going to X prime divided by X prime to X, or the other way around. This is this alpha, and check alpha. If alpha is greater than 1, you definitely make a transition. If alpha is less than 1, that is R equal to alpha, then you wait. You generate a random number between 0 to 1. If that random number is less than alpha, let's say alpha is 0.7. If that random number is 0.7, then you move to X prime. If that random number is greater than 0.7, it's the rejection region, then you don't move. Okay, you stay back where you are. All right. So this is my, in fact, I mean, both these conditions can actually be summarized in terms of this. You have to think a little. But in plain words, it's like this. You give a proposal, compute the goodness alpha. If the alpha is greater than equal to 1, definitely take the transition. If the alpha is less than 1, again toss a coin. Again generate a random number between 0 and 1. If that new random number is less than alpha, you take the transition. If it is greater than alpha, you don't take the transition. That's it. And if you go through the steps carefully, this is saying the same thing. Okay, so any doubt? Okay, all right. So you can think of this as something like this. So whether I move to the new state or not, that is the combination of two things. So you see, this transition is a two-step process. First is this probability. First is according to this probability. Second is this. So first is this probability. First is whether it should be in X. Second is, given it is in X, should it move to X prime? So it is if we can think of these two as independent, so this is the total probability of this thing, product of these two. So this is kind of the transition probability from X to X prime. So in other words, what I am doing is that I am factorizing the transition. So this is the way I can move from X to X prime. This is my transition probability. I am factorizing my transition probability into two things, into the product of currently whether it is in X into X prime times X. So it's a product of these two probabilities. Kind of they are independent. Well, this is just an interpretation. You can work out this to see that this will also indeed be the transition probability. Okay. So the next thing to study is that proof of correctness. That means if this is my transition probability, is P my stationary distribution? All right. So that's what I have said. So this metropolis testing can be thought of as a Markov chain, where the transition probabilities x to x prime is given as follows. If x prime is not x, that means indeed you are moving to a new step. It's x prime x into some r, which I'll explain what it is. Or if we are staying in the same step, it is qx to x, and then marginalization of our qx prime x to x prime with over 1 minus r. I'll explain what it is. All right. So in order to prove whether this is really the Markov chain whose stationary distribution is px, we will take help of one more condition of stationarity known as the detailed balance condition. The detailed balance condition as follows. So suppose Q is the transition probability of a Markov chain. Q is the transition probability of a Markov chain. P is the stationary probability of the Markov chain, or P is any probability distribution defined on the states. Then P is indeed a stationary distribution if this relation holds. So P is a stationary distribution if this relation, this detailed balance equation holds for all x prime, for all x prime, if this detailed balance equation holds. What does the detailed balance equation say? Detailed balance equation says that the ratio of probability being in x prime divided by being in x is same as the ratio of transition probabilities of going from x prime, from x to x prime divided by going from x prime to x. Okay, so this is my detailed balance equation. Detailed balance equation. All right, so if this equation holds, then P is a stationary probability of this Markov chain, Q Markov chain, Q transition probability Markov chain. In fact, this can be very easily proved that if you do this. So what is the condition of stationary distribution? If you do this, you can easily see that if you do this integration, so this is, if you multiply this, you will get this and this. So these two are same, and this quantity is integral of over x prime. This is a distribution, and this is independent of x, so I can bring this outside, and this integration is 1, since this is a probability distribution. You remember I talked about this long back, that all the outgoing edges should add up to 1. So all the transition probabilities are indeed a distribution given a particular state. So this is 1, and this is a independent of x, so this comes outside. So this 1 times this thing is this thing, and this is exactly the definition of stationarity. This is exactly the definition of stationarity that we talked about. So you can you can actually check only for the detailed balance condition to hold or not, to check whether stationarity holds or not. So what we will do is that I will now write down the transition probabilities for the metropolis testings and see whether detailed balance holds or not. Okay. All right. So, well, I mean, I think it would have been better if I wrote it instead of Q as T. Instead of this as T. All right. So now, in the case of metropolis testings, you will see that this T x prime x, as we have shown, can be factored into two quantities. So you remember it was a doubly stochastic process. First you generate a proposal Q, then you generate a uniform random number between these. So you can think of the transition probability as the product of the proposal distribution Okay. Achha, one more thing you note is that I forgot to mention. See here in computing alpha, I am taking the ratio of px prime to px. So the normalizing constant kind of cancels away. So I don't need to know only need to know the target distribution up to the normalizing constant. Okay, so if you factor this out, you will see that if you write it down and if you write down the reverse, okay, so what I am actually doing is that the transition matrix for this Metropolis Hastings I am writing as a product. I am writing as a product. This again can be easily done. So so my goal was to write down this transition matrix. Goal was to design this transition matrix, the transition probabilities. All right. So if you take the ratio of these two transition probabilities, you will see if you write down this ratio, this is exactly equal to this alpha that we talked about. This is exactly equal to the alpha that we in the Metropolis Hastings, the alpha that we talked about. This is exactly the ratio of this transition probability should be. I have not yet found out what the exactly this transition probabilities should be, but what I have found out is that if P is indeed a stationary distribution, this detailed balance has to hold, and if this detailed balance has to hold, this ratio has to be this. This ratio has to be this. Okay. And we turned out this is exactly that critic value alpha that we have chosen. So now this equation can be satisfied in two ways. One is this t x prime to this, if alpha is less than 1, then one way to solve this is that this is alpha and this is 1. This is one particular solution. If alpha is greater than 1, another possible solution is this is 1 and this is 1 by alpha. So the rejection is 1 by alpha, selection is 1. And the other way round is rejection is 1, selection is alpha. If you look at the definition of the Metropolis Hastings, so this is exactly as the case. So selection is 1 means we are definitely transiting, and that happens when alpha is greater than 1. And if alpha is less than 1, then the selection is probability is alpha. That means we toss a coin again, depending on the outcome, it is less than or greater than alpha, you choose it. So this is exactly same as the Metropolis condition. So in other words, the Metropolis transition condition satisfies this detailed balance equation. You have a complete proof of this. I am writing it down, but this is the intuition. If you simply check if you can think of P alpha given yx as the condition that the second random number generated is above alpha, and this Q is the proposal transition, then the total transition is proposal transition into the first random number generator according to the proposal transition multiplied by the second random number generation, which checks whether it is alpha or not. So if you do this by the definition of Metropolis Hastings, this is the minimum of this and this, and this is the minimum of this and this. And if you keep on, if you just apply these conditions, you will see that the detailed balance condition holds. Py given x into px is px given y into pi. The transition probabilities times the x probabilities are equal. The detailed balance holds. So which in other words means that px is the stationary distribution for the Metropolis Hastings sampler. Okay, so here is the complete proof. You take two cases, less than alpha and greater than alpha. All right, so this I'm not going through. Now let me explain how this works. Let me explain how this works. Let's say I am considering a one-dimensional distribution. So it's some complex one-dimensional distribution over just x, and this is px. This is the stationary distribution I want to sample from, and let's see what Metropolis Hastings does. So in this plot, what I do, this is my x-axis, and this is my time step or iteration or s. And here I am showing where my samples are coming from. So this red distribution is what I want to sample from. Initially, I start with some value of x naught, and this blue one is my proposal distribution. Let's say Gaussian, centered around x and with unit variance. All right. So this is my Gaussian. I generate x prime according to that Gaussian. And for that new x prime, I calculate alpha. That is, I calculate the ratio of px into, so the proposal distribution. So this value, I generate this value. Note that since q is Gaussian and I know p up to the normalization constant, I can find this ratio, and q is a Gaussian, this ratio I can find. In fact, it turns out that if q is a Gaussian, this ratio is symmetric. That means this is equal to 1. You can easily work it out. This is equal to 1. So alpha is nothing but ratio of the target distribution at the new point to the old point. In this particular case, like this proposal is not there, is called the simple Metropolis, not Hastings. All right. So you look at the ratio. If the ratio is greater than 1, you accept it. Less than 1, again toss a coin. Depending on the value, you accept or reject it. So suppose I get a new point. Okay. So now is in this new point, again I'll generate a proposal distribution centered around that new point and with a variance unity. Right. And you go on doing this, and you look at the different x that you generate in this process and plot it along time. This is what you get, a trace plot. And if you kind of approximate the target distribution according to the trace plot, the target distribution will become better and better. So initially it is only a peak around this, and as you go over time, they get spread out. And you see, if your variance is small, your steps are small, your proposal is small, your trace plot will not oscillate much. Whereas if you take larger steps, your variance of the proposal, so you can control the step size by changing your proposal distribution. You take larger steps, okay, and your trace plot oscillates more, but you get a faster approximation. Okay, and here it is something in between, and you get a, so this is actually the best proposal distribution to get. Okay, so this is the picture. This is the proposal kind of proposal distribution you get for different values of, or rather the trace plot you get for different values of. So what you want is that a proposal distribution is good if this trace plot is kind of mixing. It covers, there is no pattern, there is no pattern. It covers the entire x region. It covers the entire x-axis completely. If it ergodically covers it, it's a good proposal distribution. So this method, in summary, it is again unbiased. If you wait for large number of steps, you will get arbitrarily good approximation of the target distribution. But it may be slow, that in the sense that burn-in may be long, and if your proposal is not good, your exploration may be slow. But the advantage is that using your proposal distribution, you can control your exploration rate. But it needs a choice, so it's not completely parameter free, unlike Gibbs, where you need a proposal distribution to be chosen. And it is sensitive to initialization. It depends on what the burn-in time will depend on what initialization you start from. So now finally, let us compare. So we have seen two methods. One is a variational inference, which is kind of optimization. You try to approximate the true distribution by some nice form of distribution and find the closest approximation by an optimization process. And on the other hand, in MCMC, Markov chain Monte Carlo sampling based methods, you draw a large number of samples simulating a Markov chain and then combining Monte Carlo, and you approximate the target distribution using this. So the relative advantages and disadvantages. Variational inference, if you remember, it's kind of you are approximating a target distribution using sum from a family. So always there is a bias, always there is a steady state error. There is a bias always present. It's not bias free. Q is not inside Q. So there is always a bias, whereas MCMC is unbiased. Sampling based methods are unbiased. Whatever be your target distribution, if you run long enough, you will get zero error at infinite time. But variational inference are very fast. They converge very fast. They don't take much of a time. Whereas MCMC, you have to wait for a long time to converge. In variational inference, you choose the Q, over the distribution which you use to approximate. Often it's kind of a mean field approximation. Whereas in MCMC, you choose the proposal distribution. If you look at the convergence curve of MCMC, it converges slowly, but eventually it goes to zero error. Whereas the variational inference, they converge fast, but even at steady state, they have a finite error. So depending on what your application demands, you have to choose between these two. There are many ways of accelerating MCMC. For example, there is a MCMC2. That means there are two Markov chains that you use. One is called a cold Markov chain, one is called a hot Markov chain. So what you do, you use the cold Markov chain to generate your samples. And whenever you find that the cold Markov chain is saturating, it's not exploring much, you swap. And meanwhile, while the cold Markov chain is generating your distribution, you keep on simulating the hot Markov chain. The hot Markov chain, what it does, it takes a larger step. It has a proposal distribution with a higher variance, let's say. It takes larger steps. But I'm not directly using it because maybe it's not, it's having a high bonding time. So, but moment you find your original cold MCMC is slow, you switch over to the hot MCMC. And if it is currently in a good state, depending on what the alpha value is, then you make it cold and make the other one hot. Otherwise, you stay with your cold one. So this is particularly useful. What happens is that if your target distribution is multimodal, then even with a not so big proposal distribution, you will stay inside one of the modes. You will not explore the other mode ever. So if you parallelly run two Markov chains, or maybe more than multiple Markov chains, you can probably explore. There is the second Markov chain is exploring the other mode of the distribution, and when you switch, you actually generate from this as well as this. So multimodal distributions, plain Markov chain, as we have discussed, is sometimes not very useful if the valley between two modes are really low. If the valley is not very low, then you can generate. If the valley is low, you have to use multiple Markov chains, same MCMC2 if you have two Markov chains. There are other general methods. There is something called a sequential Markov chain, a sequential MCMC, or there is something called a Hamiltonian MCMC, which kind of adds a momentum term to. So you can think of this MCMC, this trajectory, is kind of a dynamical system which evolves with time, just like gradient descent or something else. So you can add momentum terms, everything else that you did in gradient descent, you get something called a Hamiltonian dynamics. You have something called a Langevin dynamics. And there is one more trick used that is called important. In rejection sampling, we are either keeping a sample or removing a sample. What we do is that, but we also know the probability of rejection. So what we do, along with getting a sample, you also generate the rejection, also retain the rejection probability. Then you do a resampling. So out of 1000 rejection sampling, maybe you have generated only 300, but along with this 300, you have this probability R. Then you resample. You make for the samples which have a high value of power, you make multiple copies of them. You sample them again with replacement. So out of this 300 sample, if we do this sampling with replacement proportional to their importance, which is this rejection probability or acceptance probability or whatever, then you can get back your 1000 samples. So it's more efficient. So this method is called importance sampling. If you combine this kind of importance sampling with this kind of Markov chain, you get some particle method. So it is again a method of generating trajectories, which gives you samples, but it's more complex. It uses importance sampling as well as this Markov chain method. So you get a particle filter. Particle filter is also quite common. So that I'm not discussing. All right. So this closes my on sampling approximation of distributions. I have a small programming assignment. It's like this. Suppose your target distribution is a mixture of k Gaussians, each with mean say at certain point and all with same variance, say 0.5 diagonal covariance matrix. And you have to generate samples from this mixture of Gaussians using metropolis hastings. You can choose your proposal distribution. Let's say they are Gaussians with different means. So you have experiments where you see the number of components of the mixture model GMM, and you choose different proposal Gaussians with different means, and you do the experiments and see plot changes. How you explore the, take any one dimension. I have taken a bivariate, so you can take maybe the x1 dimension itself. So you get your test plot. If this test plot is ergodic, it's mixing completely, and it's fast, the burn-in is less, then choice of the proposal distribution. You will see that the kind of mixer model, how many mixer components you have, will affect your what is your optimal choice of the proposal. So these experiments you do, this is pretty simple. All your metropolis testing is just 2 lines of Python code or maximum 3 lines of Python code. So it's very simple to code also. You just generate some probabilities, Gaussian random generator. In fact, you can combine them in a single line of Python code actually. And so you do the experiments just to get a feel of Markov chain Monte Carlo methods. So with this I close. This Saturday I have a class test, the second class test. And this programming assignment is the last programming assignment I'll keep, only 2 programming assignments in total. This class test this Saturday from 10:30 to 11:30, it's on not on this Markov chain, it's only on the expectation maximization, Gaussian mixer models, and the Gaussian mixer model, that is the latent variable as well as the Gaussian mixer model, expectation maximization, and the variational inference. These 3 are the syllabus. Okay, so thank you. Thank you. If you don't have any questions, stop. Let me stop the recording. Yeah.